In this video, we'll be going over the example section for the covalent bonding worksheet. Be sure to be filling this out on your worksheet the same way that I am as we go, so you can use it as a reference while you're working on the other problems. Okay, we're going to start with H2. H2, as it says here, has 2 hydrogen atoms. We're going to be looking at their valence electrons, and then we're going to be creating covalent bonds from that. So I have H and I have H because I have H2. How many valence electrons does hydrogen have? It has 1. Okay, so we're going to have 1 singular dot. I'm going to use 2 different colors so that it's easier to see where they're sharing when we put them together. When we get down here and you have like NH3, all the H's will need to have the same color valence electrons. But if the example you're doing is 2 hydrogen or 2 chlorine where it's only a singular element, then you can use 2 different colors to help you demonstrate this. All right, so they each have 1. Now we're going to redraw them where it shows that they're sharing. So we still have hydrogen and hydrogen, but now we're going to have our blue dot here and our red dot here because each of these is a valence electron, and we're going to circle them to demonstrate that they're being shared. So hydrogen has 1 valence electron. Hydrogen has 1 valence electron. We need 2 of them because it's H2. We're going to reorganize them so they're right next to each other so that they're shared between the 2 H atoms. Okay. Then for the final step, we're going to also draw a stick diagram. Anywhere that in this portion you have a circled shared pair, you're going to make a line for the stick diagram. So the stick diagram for H2 is just H line H. Okay, because again, you're replacing anywhere that they have a shared pair with a line. This will make more sense as we do a few more examples. For the next one, we have chlorine and chlorine. Chlorine has 7 valence electrons. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then again, even though they're the same element, since we only have a singular element that we're going to have sharing electrons, I'm changing colors. So I'm going to have 7 valence electrons around that chlorine atom as well. All right. So we have chlorine and chlorine because we have Cl2, and each one has 7 valence electrons. We're going to show how they form the covalent bond. So we're going to reorganize so that our singular one here and our singular one here are on the same side and can easily be shared. So to do that, we have chlorine and chlorine again. We're going to make our singular be on that side. The other sides are going to be our already have 2 electrons. Oops, I should probably make this a little bit closer. Ooh-cha. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to have my singular blue here, and then each of these still has a double because then I have 7 and 7. And then the 2 that are being shared get circled. So again, chlorine has 7. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on that one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on this one. But those 2 in the middle are being shared. So now that they're covalently bonded, each one has 8 around it. Okay, for our stick diagram, we would have Cl, line Cl, to show where that bond was as a singular bond. And then any of the extra valence electrons we're just going to have as like little dots or dashes to show that it still has the other ones around it. We didn't have anything around the H's because there were no bare valence electrons since hydrogen only has 1. But since chlorine has more around it, you're going to have those demonstrated with the little lines, and then Cl showing that bond for our stick diagram. That's why they call it a stick diagram, is because anytime there's a bond, we use a stick to represent the bonds. All right, for this next one, we have HCl, 1 hydrogen and 1 chlorine. So we're going to have H and we're going to have Cl. Now we're using 2 different colors for our 2 different elements. So hydrogen's going to be blue. So I'm going to have hydrogen like this. Chlorine's going to be red. Chlorine has 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so we've shown there individually how many they have, just like we've been doing, showing how many valence electrons are around each one. We have HCl. Gonna put them close enough that we can share our valence electrons. The way I drew it, they're on the same side already, right? So now when we come over here, it's even easier. So we have, oops. So we have the 1 from hydrogen, and then we have the 7 from chlorine. And then we draw a circle around their shared pair. So then in our stick diagram, we have H, stick, Cl, because we have a stick for our single bond. And then we have the extra valence electrons around chlorine. Another thing to note, see how the chlorine, Cl2, there's the same amount of valence electrons on each side. That's going to be one of those examples where we've been talking about being non-polar. Whereas HCl, most of the valence electrons are around Cl as opposed to being around H. So this one would be an example of being polar. You don't have to write that. That's just something to make sure you guys are paying attention to because it will eventually matter. All right, this last one is where it gets a little bit complicated. We have nitrogen and hydrogen 3. So nitrogen, hydrogen 3. So that means that we're going to have 1 N and 3 H's. So when we do this, we're going to have N, H, H, and H. And I'm going to use blue. Nitrogen has how many valence electrons? It has 5. So I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, hydrogen still only has 1 each. Now we're going to reorganize this. You can see here where you have 3 sides that only have 1 valence electron. So you're going to put an H on each of those sides. So when you draw it over here, you're going to have N, H, H, and H. That way, when you put your valence electrons, we had 2 on the top and 1 on each side. And then we put our hydrogen ones. We're going to put them right next to that. So you can see how the hydrogen are each sharing 1 with the nitrogen and how it puzzle pieces together where you can share these ones, and these ones. And it ends up looking like that, where you have N with 3 H's around it. On the top already has a double, so there's nothing there. So then when you draw your stick diagram, you're going to have N, stick to an H, stick to an H, stick to an H, and then you've got 2 dots above your N because you have those 2 valence electrons that are left up there. Okay, worth noting about the colors. When you have a singular element, like I said, you can use 2 different colors because it shows the sharing. You need to use 2 different colors because it shows the sharing. When you get into things like HCl or NH3, you need to make sure that each element is a different color. So like hydrogen was blue and chlorine was red. And then down here, nitrogen was blue and then hydrogen was red. It only matters within the problem. Notice that I only used blue and red and I used it for different things. You don't have to use a new color for every single element on the worksheet. You just need to make sure that within the one you're working on, the different elements are represented by different colors. All right, that wraps up the examples from the covalent bonding worksheet.